Well, it is my pleasure to introduce our story from the field presenter for today, which is Calliope or Seedling Crane. So Calliope has been a nurse for nearly 22 years with a focus on community and public health. And she spent a majority of her career serving people living with HIV and AIDS and providing gender-affirming care. Calliope has worked in mother-child health, in clinics and inpatient psychiatric hospitals, and made house calls. In 2023, she co-created a role where she works as an outdoor school and summer camp nurse at Camp Namanu in Sandy, Oregon. So Calliope is going to be sharing a bit about the Student Voices project that she's been working on for the last couple of years. And we're just so happy that you're here, Calliope. We will turn it over to you and just let Libby know when you would like the next slide to show up.
Okay, super. Thank you. And thank you all for having me. I'm happy to be here. In my career, I realized in reflection that no matter who I was serving, empathy and communication has been like the universal intervention for everybody, whether it was inmates or CEOs or people who live in tents or they live in the Southwest Hills or new families or people who are dying. Like every single time it came down to empathy and communication before any care delivery could be given or goals could be met and things like that. And so when I came to outdoor school, I realized there's it's a whole other different model of care out here, and I realized like, oh, we're gonna have to start with the same thing, empathy and communication. So on Sundays when everyone arrives, one of the agreements that I ask of them as they're on their rotations is to consider all 542 acres as a health and wellness center, and that we can commit to taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other while we're out here building community for the week. So I put this picture here just because I'm just so proud to be an outdoor school nurse. And this is all of us from last spring. And many of us keep returning. And we actually just made history in that this spring we have the same nurses coming back from fall. And no one on staff can remember when that happened last. So I'm really, really proud of us and the work that we're doing in our district. It's very excited. Next slide, please. So in this spring of 23 was my first spring at outdoor school, and I got my feet wet. And then in the summer, I participated in a research project through the American Camp Association of Camp Health and the American Camp Association, where we screened, there were 7 sites in the nation that screened campers before they arrived at camp and when they left. And it was for emotional social health. And our site here at Namanu, 93% of the people who responded said, oh, we felt like we were cared for because someone understood what we needed. And that for me was an aha moment because I didn't have time to go through everybody's screening tools. I just scanned really quickly and found anyone who was a red flag and paid attention to them. But that was only like 6, I think it was 6 or 7 people that summer out of the hundreds of kids that we screened. And so I thought about it for outdoor school, and I was like, well, all the paperwork that I receive is from the adults in the student's life and nothing from the student. And so I wanted to hear their voice. And so I got permission to do a screening tool, and we went round and round. And this is the 4th iteration of the questions that we asked the students. And so what we found when we did it in the spring, I was able to find 432 answers, and it was all in paper format. And then I talked about it with the district or with MESD, and we discovered that Camp or Westwind was also using a screening tool. So we joined together, and in the fall, we decided to do pre and post emotional screenings, and we found 395 people responded. We did it electronically and by paper. And I'll say more about that later. But after pulling all of that together and talking about it, we've decided to only do a pre-screening because the kids are actually getting asked a lot of questions after outdoor school from various touch points. And so we didn't want to be another one. And we figured the pre-screening was the most valuable for us. And so we ask them these questions and we give the papers to the teacher and they return them. We ask the students to fill it out in class and not take it home. And then they give them back to me in their health history forms. So the next slide, please. Thank you. So in this experience, I wanted to give you all some samples of responses and the interventions that we had done. So the first one, many times in the bottom, it'll say, what are you worried about when you think about outdoor school? And there's an other. And one time, many students in a class said, oh, we're worried about Calliope, or what's Calliope going to do? Or I don't want to be in a cabin with Calliope. It was significant. Oftentimes I'll see somebody's name, but to have so many write in the student's name, we were able to really help that kid navigate the community, but also help the community navigate their interactions. Because really what it comes down to is they're all going back to town together. So we can't fix everything, but we can help in a moment, especially with so many people who are so worried. And I don't think that would have come up if we had only paid attention to the adult forms. Then the next one, we have so many people were concerned about omitting activities or making things easier for a student. And the student wrote on their form, I'm disabled and might need extra help with tasks, but I can do things on my own. I was like, oh, you're beautiful. So we talked to the student on Sunday when they arrived and thanked them for filling it out and said, these are your trusted adults. Here we are. Let us know. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going. And that student made it all the way through, participated in everything, and just was in a heyday around here. And we didn't have to do any modifications at all. One student wrote social anxiety all over her form. And I had thanked her for filling out the form. And then she said, well, did you see what I wrote? And I was like, it didn't stand out to me because social anxiety is not that uncommon. Then we had a check-in and she talked about it more. And then throughout the week, she was able to work on some things, not just with me, but with her classmates and herself, to just have some ease around some stuff. Internalized depression is so real. That's my diagnosis of what she had going on. But she did really great. And then anytime on that last question, it says, whenever I'm upset, I can talk to a trusted adult. Every time it says they circle never, I make a note of it. And then if their name comes up or anything like that, I make sure that the staff know that this person doesn't trust adults and that we could take it a little bit slower because there's another way to approach it if they're not trusting. And then the next slide, please. Teacher notes often have notes about behaviors. The note from the adults back home might say like, oh, Johnny will act out, just give him some candy or something like that, and it's just so confusing. But this one stood out because this kiddo said, I promise I won't try to get in trouble. That tells me this person's getting messages that they're trying to get in trouble, right? And I'm kind of scared. That tells me, your behaviors might be demonstrating something that's going on for you. So on Sunday, we had a check-in, and the kid really just wanted to know, what are my consequences? Really had an edge, like what's going to happen, and by the end, so happy that they got to stay all week, that there weren't any major, conversations or issues or anything like that. And we see that a lot. Like what are my strengths? These 12-year-olds will write whole pages of all the things that are their strengths, and then the adults will list the very same things as issues. So I just love that we have this chance to give people who don't often get asked about themselves this chance to speak up, I think it's making a difference. And last but not least, my dear friend wrote, I've got ADHD. It may not seem like I'm listening, but I really am. And then at the bottom, it says, use a space to tell us anything else. It said, I love doing TikTok or something like that. And the, this kid was labeled all these disruptive, all these things. And the adults from home said, he's a good kid, just has some trouble, and it was so beautiful because you can move out here, right? And so I, of course, kept an eye on, we'll call the kid Taylor, kept an eye on Taylor the whole week, like, ooh, don't get in trouble, right? And there's all these movements going on in all the field studies and jumping from place to place and, all these things. So I talked to Taylor's friends who said, oh, yeah, Taylor's going to be famous. Like, he has so many TikToks. And I asked the field instructors, oh, yeah, Taylor had so much to talk about and plants and animals. And at the end of the week, I went back to the teacher because I try to point out bias when it's safe because these kids are in these classrooms and there's a lot of bias sometimes. And she said she had no idea how smart he is or how much everyone likes being around him because she sends him to the principal's office. As soon as he acts out, she's got classroom management. He's gone, right? And she decided that she'll move his desk to the back of the class and let him stand up and move around more. And I talked to her about the ADHD, which I love. Now, every time I say ADHD, I feel like I'm saying ADHD, but she confirmed like he doesn't have an IEP, he doesn't have a diagnosis, and that she would get him screened and make modifications. So next slide, please. So in this process, over the last year, we were able to think about some changes that we wanted to make, some based on these answers and some based on teacher feedback. And so for my little piece of the world, right, I'm not really an educator in the same sense as my colleagues are out here. So I wanted health and wellness to just be interwoven into everything that they're doing. So I've increased access to passive programming spaces and made big posters, and I put them up, or I say we because we all work on it, put them up around the site so that there's prompts to help people think about their emotions or think about how their body's feeling or just think about, empowering thoughts for a moment. A lot of people write that they're worried about food. And I noticed that a lot of people are like timid to ask for food in the middle of the day because it's not it's not lunchtime, right? And so I started increasing the amount of fruit that the kitchen orders and then having fruit in different spaces around site. And then people still weren't eating it. So then I started cutting it and now it's gone. It's like locusts. They're just like devouring it. And so now I have big fruit bowls in my fridge and then I pull them out between field studies or make little go bags for the student leaders. Here, take this with you. You might need it, that kind of thing. We were able to make new prayer locations, which worked out really, really well this fall. I'm so happy. And we were able to tell families that we were going to do it. And I think that maybe influenced that they sent their students along to our site. And then menus became a big deal. So I started printing up extra menus and putting them all over site and also telling student leaders and staff where they were. And what I was finding is that they would just say, oh, I don't know what's for lunch. We'll see. But that doesn't help the student who's restricting or the student who indulges or the student who's just like, I'm just hungry. Like, can I eat lunch or not? Like that kind of thing. So we think that made a difference. And then this top picture is all the rocking chairs that we've been able to put up around my porch. That's the health center there. And then and that's an organic picture. I'm so happy because the kids just ran over there and started rocking. And that self-regulation is it's really evident that it's making a difference. And then the bottom picture is a movement space. And those posters say things like energy, but they don't say yoga, and the drawings are stick figures. So they're not really, they're universal images of not like they're not just one, category of a human. And then there's stretching tools and hula hoops and massage tools and things like that, because I'm also finding like a lot of exercise out here, and the student leaders, staff, students especially, they're like, my legs hurt, my legs hurt. I'm like, here, use this roller. It's not Tylenol. You're not in pain. You're actually just using muscles. And so we'll just talk about it and talk about that release. Next slide, please. So then some of the, we had to think about like what schools need what and what's happening at different sites. And so we're still learning that. We're still having those conversations because there's 5 sites in my district and everyone's doing something different. And you can't give the same experience to everyone who goes to each site, but what could be common in what we send everyone home with that they get to use when they go back to their communities and they're all back together. Our communication with the teachers in the beginning, mine wasn't that great. And then when I linked up with Westwind and learned how they did it, we were able to make it better by sending emails ahead of time and thanking them. I've been thanking people a lot more for participating because I think that will keep them doing it. But also, we don't think I think I thank people a lot, but like in general, people don't get thanked a lot. So like it's one more thing for these teachers to do. It's like, let me just recognize that and thank them for it. And same with the team. The first year it was just, oh, the nurse is doing this thing. But now I saw them last week, I stopped by the office and they've all come up with a whole new plan on how we're going to process all these forms this spring. And I'm so happy. I'm like, oh, because it takes me a really long time. And now they've worked out how we're going to do it in the spring. The IEPs and safety plans, we're finding that we don't, at least, the special needs coordinators, they still need them. But what we're finding on the other levels is that if we just know who they are and what suits them, then we're okay. We don't really have to go back to the IEP for, the education stuff as much, because we're able to just go, oh, Phil needs music to relax. And so it's like, oh, well, that's what we're going to work on, instead of like, let's sing a song and dance for a minute, instead of, oh, what does the IEP say that you need? And then for the electronic answers and the written answers, like that ADHD example, I'm finding that I like the written answers better, or we like the written answers better, because they write a lot more. We get to really see what's going on. It's good for them to sit still and self-reflect and be writing. Like the neural pathways that happen when you're writing is huge. And then we're finding they also draw, or they erase. And sometimes it's what they've erased is what I really want to know, and I can see it on their paper. And then we've, also processing. When they were electronic, we got all the information at once through the Google form and the Excel sheet. And now to process one class, I can do it in about an hour right now, to input all the stuff onto the Google form and then get it ready for the staff. So it takes me about 4 hours a week to do that part. But it's worth it, because seeing the written answers is definitely more valuable. And then we're always in this plan, do, study, act cycle. And so we're hoping that we can keep it the same for this year and then study it all in the fall, because I've been doing it each session instead. And then conference feedback, we presented this spring that wasn't spring, that was fall at Camp Tamarack. And we got a lot of great feedback from the attendees, and that helped inform us on what we wanted to do for the spring session. And then last but not least, the next slide. This is my pride and joy intervention. So one of the posters that I have up around site, and I also have it in small paper format, is this feelings check. Going back to just helping people have words for how they're feeling. And I give them, when they're having a hard time, I sit with them with this and I say, okay, this is Monday. I mean, this is Sunday. It's like you're about to go on this hike. All your friends are like, oh, it's so great. You're going to have a great time. That's outdoor school. Oh, it's so great. You're going to love it. Well, it's Sunday. You're at the parking lot. You have your pack. You're wondering, do I have everything I need? And they said, we're going to go this way. Okay. Monday comes and you've got your map now. And you're like, okay, what are we doing? Okay, this is what we're doing. Okay. You're hiking along. Tuesday gets a little bit harder. It's that uphill part of your hike, and you need a little bit more support. And that's what those two poles are. Like, you need a little bit more help. It's getting a little bit tough. Wednesday, you get to the peak and you're like, okay, we can go back now. And people are like, no, we're not even there yet. And you're like, what? Okay, well, it's too far to go back to the parking lot. I can't sit here by myself. I'm going to have to keep going. Thursday, I like to say that it's all downhill, like smooth sailing, but you still need a little support because now you're a little fatigued. You're running out of snacks. Your feet are tired. You're still not where they said you'd be. What's happening? And then Friday is your victory. And then I like to say that you sometimes go through all of this in one day or half a day, or it's just like this for you. It's this moment, but all the feelings come up, and I'll sit with them and say, and how are you feeling right now? And they'll point to a word in the mountain, and then I'll say, well, how do you want to feel? And maybe they'll point to another word, or they'll say a word, and we'll just work on it. Okay, what do you have to do for that? Okay, go do it. And all of this will take me maybe 5 minutes max, but what I'm finding is that when I give a blank one to some of the students who really are having a hard time, like every night they're coming in and they're just really upset, give them a blank one and be like, just write it down. Just keep track of how you feel, in the empty mountain. And I think it's been working really, really well. And I think my favorite response from doing this intervention was this fall. This kid comes back on Friday and he's like, I remember there's 6 emotions. And I was like, well, yeah, there's 6, but then those are the base ones. He's like, but you don't have anger or disgust on there. And he was like so mad at me. And I was like, oh, that's so cute, because you're right, I don't. And maybe I should, but yeah, so I think it's a helpful tool, and it just helps put it into perspective. Like, we're all on this hike. We're all trying to get to Friday. And I like to let them know on Sunday, every Sunday, I'm nervous, wondering what's going to happen. And so, like, I'm in it with you, that kind of thing. I think this is a good visual for that. And that's the deal.